True.
Fantan is a startup firm that is still in a period of rapid development. I predict at least 3 to 4 multiple growth common stock questions where you have to figure out the price of the stock like this. The company plans on retaining all of its earnings and paying no dividends for the next 5 years. Forecasts suggest that 6 years from now, the company will pay a dividend of $3.10, and then the dividends will grow 3% every year thereafter. What is the value of a share of Fantan stock if the appropriate required rate of return is 13.2%? When all else fails, put it on a timeline. So there's my time times 0 through 5, nothing. Period 6 is $3.10 for my dividend. Period 7 going forward is 3% growth. So what do I do first? I figure out my price where the stock grows forever. My class, you know this. What period do you figure P for first? 6. So how do you do that? P6 is equal to next dividend divided by R minus G. So $3.10 multiplied by 1.03 divided by your required rate of return of 13.2 minus your growth rate. That gives you a price of $31.50. You add those two cash flows together, your dividend and your price. That gives you a cash flow at period 6 of $34.40. Now, what do you do once you figure that out? You don't have a lot of time, right? Because you might want to come back to these because they take a little bit longer than other ones. First of all, you want to change your calculator one payment a year. And then you put in all your cash flows. So we do 0, cash flow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Cash flow 6 is $34.40. I'm going to discount it at what rate of return? 13.2. Down arrow key, net present value, $16.35. Is that coming back to you? I'm not going to be spending a lot on time on the last test. I'm going to do some, but mostly I'm going to do the stuff that you haven't done for a while. By the way, there's other concept questions in here, bonds, weak form. Here's some bond questions. Let's skip over that. Here's a cash flow question, 14. A small catering business is expected to generate a series of cash flows consisting of $100,000 at the end of each of years 4 through 22. Using a discount rate of 10% a year in your calculation, calculate the present value of this business's future cash flows. So you have nothing, period 0 through 3. Then you have $100,000, periods 4 through 22. Put those in your calculator. Then you're going to be discounting them at 10% a year. It's going to take me a long time to do 22 cash flows, so I'm not going to do it. But I will do it after, if everybody wants me to, after I reach my hour and a half. So when all else fails, write a timeline. The test will tell you if it's semi-annual or annual on a bond. It should. That's what 16 is. It's a semi-annual bond. Titan Tire Co. has bonds with a 6% coupon rate that are paying semi-annually and $1,000 face value. The bond's current yield to maturity is 7.6 per year, which means the required rate of returns on the bond is also 7.6%. The bonds mature in 8 years. Calculate the market price of one Titan bond. First of all, 2, down arrow key payment. I need to get my calculator on 2 payments a year. You have 8 years left to maturity, so your N is 16. Your payment is $1,000 multiplied by 6% divided by 2. That's your $30 coupon. Your interest a year is 7.6% that you're gonna discount it at. Don't change that rate. So, I'm going to put in 16 payments a year as my N. 30 is my payment. $1,000 is my future value. My interest a year is 7.6%. The price of that bond is $905.39.
How'd you get the payment?
How'd I get the payment? I took the $1,000 times the 6% coupon rate, which is stated, and I divided it by 2. That's my $30 coupon. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Be sure and note if it's annual or semi-annual. Here's a couple concept questions. You're doing a capital budgeting analysis of a project and are interested in using the internal rate of return decision rule, which obviously requires a calculation of that. You have estimated all the future cash flows, you know the initial outlay, and you have identified an appropriate required rate of return. That's your R. Suppose that suddenly you reassess the project's risk and you decide that it has decreased. You accordingly reduce the required rate of return. How will this revision affect the IRR? Your IRR does not change if your R changes because it's internal. So R can change. The IRR cannot change unless the cash flows change. The cash flows are remaining the same. 26, suppose a project has conventional cash flows and your analysis is using a 9% required rate of return results in a net present value greater than 0. Which of the following is definitely false? The internal rate of return is equal to 0. Why? Because the IRR is where NPV, your net present value, is equal to 0. So if your NPV is greater than 0, that tells you that your internal rate of return is not 0. Remember us talking about that? So basically, you have to remember that your IRR is at the point where your NPV is equal to 0. If your NPV was negative, then your IRR is greater than your required rate of return.